Good afternoon, everyone. It's Nomsa here at Nkosi Talk Shows. Find your own voice, lead from within. So, with me today, I am with Dr. Biget. How are you, Dr. Biget?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Numsa. It's such an honor and a delight to be with you again. I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So, today we're talking about how grief and loss impacts your relationship. Grief and loss have profound impacts on a relationship, affecting emotionally, socially, and psychologically dimension of human connections. So understanding these impacts can help our uh, individuals and their loved ones navigate the challenges that arises in the work of significant loss. So today we are going to share the keys ways grief and loss can affect a relationship. So guys, feel free to comment, or if you have ever go through the grief in a relationship, please feel free to share your story. And over to you, Dr. Biget. I know this is what you do for work as a grief coach. So, what do you think about the topic?
Thank you, Numsa. Thank you. And that is definitely true that grief and loss can affect our relationship, and a lot of time in more ways than most people can imagine. The Grief Recovery Institute, actually the only institutions that is using evidence-based method, says that whenever there is a relationship that is not working well, and when we talk about relationship, we're talking about personal relationship like romantic relationship, yes, and also other form of relationship, including, let's say, your work, a relationship at work, relationship with friends, and with family member. So it's all encompassing. But when there are relationships that's not working well, when a lot of your relationship or your particular form of relationship not working well, that's usually come from incompletely resolved grief. And whether in general your relationship with everybody is not working so great, sometimes we feel like, oh, we just seemingly can't get along with everybody, or it is perhaps you have great relationship with your colleagues and coworkers, but your romantic relationship seems to be one after another story, so to say. Then typically that is it come from incompletely resolve of grief. and and to start with, I want to share with our audience what grief really is actually. And a lot of time when we talk about grief, people think about the big four: death, divorce, dire diagnosis, and job loss. Those definitely are the most common causes of grief. But there are actually more than 40 different causes of grief. The true definitions of grief is the unsettling feelings caused by a change, a loss, or unmet hope. A change, a loss, or unmet hope. What does unmet hope look like? Unmet hope could look like, oh, okay, here at least in the US, okay, you know what? The pandemic happened and COVID-19 and the lockdown and this and that and so on and so forth. Okay, we survived through that. We pulled through. So everything should be good now, right? Everything should be better. At least back to normal, and things should be more accessible and so on and so forth. And instead what we're facing is okay. Well, things is yeah, we're no longer locked up, but things just seemingly not any better. And now it's went from gas was affordable. Now in some places you could barely even afford the gas or the food or the grocery, and that's unmet hope. You think things gonna be better, and it's going backward completely the other day. Like, what happening here? And then changes. Let me ask you, do you know anyone in your life who live in this modern world who has not experienced change? And so any of those can cause us to grieve at different intensity, but at the end of the day, still grieving. And any of those can cause us to have a relationship that is not at all ideal. So that is but that is very true. The Grief Recovery Institute does say any relationship that's not working, when you have relationships that's not working, it's come from mostly incompletely resolved grief. And there are a number of reasons for that. One of them is being triggers. Has anybody here, have you ever experienced any triggers, Numsa?
What did you say, Dr. Bickett? Have I ever experienced any triggers of grief?
Not triggers of grief, but being easily triggered. And for instance, some people say, we see this a lot in relationship. Some people say something and it just make you just become very angry and become very annoyed or something, and you kind of notice it actually. You're like, and there are certain things. There's certain thing that is a personal preference. Let's say you don't particularly like people who smoke cigarettes and people smoke around you, and that's annoyed you. That's one thing. But if people do certain things, certain behavior, and you just like, oh my God, that is just so unbearable. Oh my goodness, somebody do something. And perhaps even your friends and families like, oh, that's not a nice behavior, but they kind of like around you, and that's annoyed you. That's
Sorry.
and then they leave it at that is that. But you find it's just something that somebody do particularly bothersome to you. Perhaps somebody say, let's say somebody, this is one thing that I experienced. Someone, actually my former husband, and many other people, I know like 4 people by now. Anytime you ask them, let's say you say, so let's leave at 7 a.m. And this person would say, yeah, okay. And then at 5 minutes to 7, they will start something that would take 10 to 15 minutes. And that could be they start going to the bathroom, they start making a phone call, and what have you. And this doesn't seem like a trigger to common people, right? But you start noticing, you're like, what on earth? That will make us always late. Always a little bit overbearing word, but in general, will make us 90% of the time late. If I say 7, and then it's like, oh, I'm still in the bathroom. Oh, I'm in the middle of the phone call. Why the heck did you start it 5 minutes before? Well, 10 minutes before that, you're sitting around doing nothing, literally. And so people would not think this as trigger, but this is actually trigger. And in this situation, in this particular example, with every person whom I spoke, the majority of them are clients whose significant others complain, as you can imagine. and they said, yeah, you know what, I'm not sure why I'm doing this. And when we understand, it is actually incompletely resolved grief that they have with somebody else within their life. And usually it is growing up, they were being conformed, or even as they are living their life, they actually really doesn't like certain people to treat them certain way. And this behavior is actually a retaliation. except it's a misdirected retaliation from somebody else. They have an incompletely resolved angst, and they misdirected their grief to somebody else. They misdirected their angst, their grief, and instead of being able to do something with the person, they, because they cannot, now it's still in them. This is men and women. And then they actually say, well, you know what, it's become a subconscious behavior of just retaliating. And naturally, it's not going to make any relationship work with the significant other if they don't understand what's going on, because they'll be like, okay, well, then why are you just trying to make me angry or something for doing something like this? So that is one example of more subtle trigger and or misdirected behavior. Some others more common trigger is something that's more apparent. I have many clients. One client is actually in this book here, Seeking Peace, and the in the book it says share about a lady who was going out with friends, and somebody, a friend of a friend, said something, and she got super angry. She got super angry and started yelling at people, at the person out in the middle of public, in the middle of a the coffee shop line, and the friend was like, "What are you doing? Why are you yelling at me like that?" And later on, they discovered that she actually misheard something that make her think that that other person is having an affair with a man. And that make her really, really angry. Why? Because her own father had an affair, and she was really hurt. She was a young child, and because of the father's affair, she experienced a lot of difficulty and a lot of grief in her life, and continuing on and off and on and off in her life. And it's a grief that she did not completely resolve because the family decided not to address it. And as she grew up, anytime she even remotely thinks somebody having an affair, even when she misheard thing, she just snapped and exploded. And in that particular situation, if one of her friend had not known her well enough and be compassionate and so forth, it would have dissolved that friendship altogether, having somebody yelling at you in the middle of a coffee shop line. So there's a couple example of triggers, certain thing that people say that induce you to do behavior that is actually only create friction, or actually certain thing people says that induce us to be very angry or very sad or withdrawn. With triggers not only is always making us angry, by the way, could make us withdrawn. Any of those that result in friction in relationship.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Dr. Biget, that sometimes some people can be triggered with their past, and it's important to actually get to know your friends and family when you are with them, because sometimes you might say something and they will react to that situation, and maybe they're still grieving underneath in their subconscious mind. So if you don't know, you enter the battle that is not meant for you. That's why I always say choose your battles. Sometimes it's very, very important where you don't understand to just ask questions, that if somebody behaves the way they behave, is very, very, very important. Mostly, some people, when they go through the grieving, like I like the way you actually touched on it, that grieving is not just for death. You can grieve when your hopes and dreams are not unmet, like expected changes in your life, they can bring grief as well. And it's actually very, very important to seek help so that you don't keep, you see, like this person you were describing, that her parents, her father cheated on her mom. So then and she never dealt with things properly. And then it showed up later affecting her. So that means when she sees people that are cheating, she hears people that are cheating, it does affect her. But if she had dealt with it, she should have been okay with it, because it's not her story, it's not her battle. She has gone through the battles, so she does not need to still getting affected with other people's mistakes. And also her dad doing that, it was never her fault either. So sometimes it's very, very important to actually, as we get older, to deal with our battles, which is, this is what I'm doing in my life now when I'm walking through this path of my fast, 1,000-day fast. I'm actually going like checking everything in my life and just cleanse my life and asking, like, just going through healing every part of my life where I feel there was a grief. I just go through healing. So it's very, very, very important to do that when you're facing grief. You touched so many things, Dr. Bickett. And also grief can actually affect somebody by withdrawing from people or finding it difficult to connect with others. Like this girl, if she had actually be in the present moment, she would have not jumped into conclusion. But
Mhm.
people, they do that all the time. They jump into
Yeah.
conclusion, and when they jump into conclusion, you just have to step back. I've been in that situation a lot where sometimes I try to solve something and then somebody jumps into conclusion, and then I just have to step back. I let them, not to defend myself, I just let them think what they think and just leave them,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, we shouldn't jump into conclusion when it comes to things. And also, grief is a process. If somebody has ever felt going through that grief in a relationship, guys, Dr. Pickett is a specialist. In me, I am not a specialist in grief. I can tell you this. I'm a just love harmonist, a matchmaker, really psychologist, but that does not mean that I'm a grief coach, because I don't know how to deal with the grief. I went through psychologist. That's when I realized that actually not everyone knows how to deal with grief. You got to go when you're dealing with grief, you have to go to somebody who specializes in it, because they will be able to help you. So it's very, very important, guys. If you're going through grief, we get in touch with the Dr. Biget. She'll be able to help you with whatever
And
you're
it's
going through.
and it's very, very true. I want to jump in there and say it, because some people say, "Oh my gosh, you know." So I've been going through a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor all this year or all these months or all these weeks. And so why didn't they tell me? I have clients come to me this way, and actually the majority, at least 90% of my clients, are either in therapy or been through therapy, and about a quarter on consistent basis of my clients are therapists, and but some of the clients might say, what? Why didn't they tell me? And we feel kind of like, oh my God, have we been cheated all this time? Please know that that is not the case. Now, there are multiple components of grief. If you really look at grief, grief is so complex. That's why we can spend a few hours just talking about this particular topic. We're not going to be here a few hours. We're going to condense it. But grief is so complex. If you grieving, you notice this, that it seems like you feel it in multiple different way, and in multiple different, even like locations in your body, right? You might kind of like up here in your head, you're like, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about this. This is like keep spinning in my head, and perhaps it's an image, it's something somebody says or something. It's just keep playing in your mind. It's like a snippet of movies, so to say, that keep going and going and going, and you want to go to sleep and this comes up. You wake up in the morning, it comes up. You go to the bathroom, this comes up. And so it's spinning in your mind, but then you feel it other part in your body, in you as well. Some people feel happiness in their chest. Some people feel discomfort in their stomach. Some people just feel, some days they kind of like wake up and they feel like they're in a fog. They like, you literally feel, wake up like some clients says it feels like I'm swimming in oil half of the time, and all these things. So grief is multi-dimension. Psychology, the therapy, counseling has a good understanding of the mind, so it actually does help you with the mind part of the grief, because then after a while you understand, okay, I got it. I feel this way because of I'm this. People who experience trauma, and trauma, if we look back at the definition of grief there, the unsettling feelings caused by a loss, trauma's loss of safety, a change, trauma a lot of time can cause change, not a lot of time, and then unmet hope. Trauma is usually something that happened that you wish has not happened, even if it's something you witness. Like one of my client is a wartime photographer. He saw somebody got blown up in front of him, and that was, you wish something that you never witnessed, right? So that's unmet hope. Trauma causes grief, and even even when it is something like that, any of those, then it's impacted us in multiple ways. Now therapists help you understand, okay, now I understand why I snap, why I revert back into the post-traumatic stress disorder behavior. And then you also understand what you're not supposed to do or what you're supposed to do. So there is a role of therapy there. And at the same time, as you catch by now, there is a lot more beyond just the mind when it comes to grief. When it comes to grief, it's affected our heart. It's affected your physical body in ways that you might not, and many physicians would not recognize. And then it's also, for those who studies and believe in energy at Einstein. So often there's a quote that often attributed to Einstein that says everything is energy. The chairs you're sitting is a form of energy, the clothes you're wearing, and you're yourself. People who, for instance, everything's just different level of vibration of energy. If you look between water, ice, and vapor, it's just different level of vibrations, right? And grief affect the vibration of your energy differently. Now, but even without the energy part, we know, for instance, grief affected your heart. That's why you can understand certain things. You understand, many of these clients, the example I gave earlier, the clients would say, I really know that I should not be starting things 5 minutes before my wife or husband or somebody says, let's go. I know that, but I can't help it. I still freaking do it. And help me. I want this relationship to work. See, the person is a wonderful person. I just can't help it. And people with post-traumatic stress disorder will say this. I know I should not yell and lose it all together. Even the lady whose father betrayed her, she said, I can't catch that. And I know, I know that. But and so we know that we understand it completely, but we still react. Why? Because it's in your heart and it's in your body. And your heart actually send signals throughout your body. Many of us hear that if your brain sends signals to your right hand and say, hand, move your finger, you will move your fingers. So what many people not aware is studies now shows that number one, our heart sends signals throughout our body. And in this case, if somebody was hurt, such as this girl or some people, these other people, the heart will send signal. What the other part that many people not aware is the signals from the heart often is 60 up to 60 times stronger and faster than the one from our brain. So your brain can say, don't do ABC. Your mind you understand this, then there's no reason for you to feel guilty. You understand this, and there's no reasons for you to get fearful and act in certain way. There is you understand this, and there's no reason for you to snap back and get angry. Your brain understand that, but if your heart is not healed from the grief, as you say, Numsa, a lot of time it lies in the background. If we did not address it at the beginning, or we don't go back and address it, because it is absolutely possible to do it, then what happened is the heart, nobody ever want to get hurt, nobody, and so the heart would say, oh, something happened. Oh, I don't want that trauma anymore. And guess what happened? Your mind was still making sense. The heart already going boom, 60 times faster and stronger than your mind. You already reacted. You already reacted instead of responding. And then afterward, you say, oh my God, why did I do that again? Anybody ever had this, hear somebody say that? Or maybe you yourself say that? Somebody say, I don't know why I did it again. I don't know why I did it again. I know I should not have snapped, and I don't know why I just can't stop myself, because it's in your mind. Your heart already jump in. And that's the second layer of grief, which is still recognizable to you. The third layer of grief is the body. And this is often very tricky. And this is also why, yes, therapy is helpful, but if you don't address the heart, as you already see, it's only help partially. And grief get into our body sometimes in a way that we don't even recognize. One client that came to mind was a lady who she came to me because of her husband was leaving. Very heartbreaking. And this is happening after 3 unsuccessful pregnancy. She always loved children. She and her husband, this couple love children. They plan on having children. They said, we want to have 3 kids, at least 2, maybe 4. So they love children. And so they got married, all wonderful. And then she started getting pregnant, and she have one after another miscarriage. And with each miscarriage, it's traumatized her. It traumatized her husband, but it's also traumatized her. And as every good, well-resourced person, she goes to therapy. Even the first one, she went to therapy. And then the second one, she went to therapy. And then the third one, she was still in therapy with the third therapist by the time she came to me. And the therapist helped. The therapy helped her in many ways. But at the end of the day, she said, I know. And my husband said this. And then I know that each of them, it make her become a different person and more traumatized and start feeling guilty and blaming herself, and nobody can get to the bottom of this. And she went through everything. She worked with physicians, she tried holistic and all sort of different things. She even tried some form of all different, like Reiki and some other form of work, so to say, to help her to be able to, so she will get pregnant, but she seems to cannot sustain the pregnancy. She tried all these things and it just doesn't work. And so she came and she said, you know, I need help with the grief because my husband now, because he said it's not the pregnancy loss. He's very much with me in there, and she could tell that he really is empathetic and sympathetic. But the person that I changed, and it just make her very withdrawn and very angry at the same time, and all these things. She said, I know I'm not even the same person anymore, which in a way it's understandable, but the therapy doesn't help me get back to become the person I was. And even if I can't have kids, at least I can still have myself. I said, okay, let's just work. And I don't do therapy. I teach his class and courses it's basically a 6-module, typically 8 to 10 weeks work that you do. Everybody different. So with grief, there's no one size fits all. But with her, within the second or the third meetings, we discover that yes, there's a lot of pain with all this. But what happened with her, and she has forgotten this completely. And the beautiful part of this course is with therapies, a lot of time we sit there and try to understand our behavior and talk about it and think about things that had happened. And for some people, it's only re-traumatize you. If you ever have something that you talk about it, but then you cannot resolve it, then it's re-traumatize you and deepen your trauma. With the work, with the way the course is designed, we do not dig. We do not say, let's try to think up what happened in this and think up what happened in there. We just address what it is. But somehow it will allow things that need to come up and be resolved to come up. And it's happened on consistent, regular basis with every client. And with her, so the second or third week, she called me and she said, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. Something just came back to her when she was reading something from the course, and I said, what is it? So turned out with this lady, when she was a child, she was like 11, 12 years old, she has a cat. And the cat tried to give birth at her home. As she said, I could see it very well now. The cat got pregnant. She found herself under the stairs, and her family said, oh, it's time to give birth. So they set up this area. But this is many years ago, and she lived in a rural area. And so they said, okay, cat's going to give birth. And then they keep they know not to disturb the cat. So they keep peeking from time to time. Unfortunately, because of it turned out that the kitten, that this was a young cat, and the kitten that cat was trying to give birth was a large kitten or something, but the cat died giving birth. And in her mind, when she remembered, in her mind, she said, this happened it was yesterday, and she cried and cried and cried and cried. She said, I can see it again. I'm right there, worrying about her cat. And she could see the last time she saw the cat, she's like, I could see it, and I should have known it. And I did ask mom, and mom said, give her a little more time. And her eyes, big and worried and fearful of the cat, looking at her, begging for help. And I stood there, and I see, couldn't do anything, and she's like, oh, I feel so guilty. And her rational mind, even as she said that, she said, I understand it is not my fault, but I remember that every cell in my body just cringed, and she actually even vomited when she recalled this. And she said, oh my God, everything just cringed in my body, and I feel like every internal organ passing, and oh my goodness, and now and it just made me believe that how dangerous it is to get pregnant and give birth. Now, if every cells in your body believe, your organs pass just the concept of how dangerous it is to get pregnant and give birth. Did she talk to somebody at the time? She talked to mom. She got upset. The family was upset too. But they say to her when she said, "Oh, so it's super dangerous. It's you can die. You can die from getting pregnant. You can die from giving birth." As a good mom, as good parents, what does parents do? No, 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 it's just that one. Don't worry about it. Don't worry, don't worry. It will be just fine. Now look at me. Look at your aunt. Look at your neighbor. Everybody give birth fine. But it's an uncompletely resolved grief from watching her cat, and the guilt that she has. And that grief pushed in instead of resolve and become an unrecognized fear. Our body, human, has the ability to forget things that we cannot address as part of our survival. And therefore, after a little time, mom keeps saying, "Oh, don't worry," which is actually invalidating her grief. "Don't be silly." Over times, "Don't be silly." And so she said, "Okay, so it's silly to think that way." No, well, she doesn't feel silly, and her heart's scared, and everything's scared. So guess what? She said, "Okay, I shouldn't be silly," which means I shouldn't talk about this. So she buried it even further, and then her mind helped her forget it. But guess what happened? If your heart believe, "Oh, it's dangerous to get pregnant," you're not going to carry a pregnancy through. You will release it from your body somehow, some way, because guess what? You don't want to die. And so that comes up. So we work through that, and then it is within a matter. We work with that. We work with all the grief that she experienced from her pregnancy, and her husband said, "You know what? I know when we refilled this, and he was like, 'Oh my God, okay, I'm not going to leave yet. I will stay.'" And we work together, and the husband experienced grief. End up working with both of them separately, and they both moved through their grief of losing the unborn children. And then we work with her. I work with her as well with this. They stayed together, and in less than 6 months from the time she was work with me, she completed. So within that year, she got pregnant. She carried through successful pregnancy, bring up a healthy boy. And then after that, she has a second child. Because why? The body is no longer, her word was, "Everything in my cell seems like clenching up, and my organ just shutting down," which then will without her being conscious. So now she was conscious about that, but when she was pregnant, everything in her cells doing that, and she wasn't aware about that. And the psychologist therapist was trying to help their best, but they didn't get to the bottom of it. And then if you were to learn things about energy, you actually know that grief also affected our energetic work. Now, people who really understand energy, some people will say, "But I have been through the energy people, and it doesn't help completely. I feel better, and then it doesn't." Now, as somebody who is trained and certified in energy work, we actually know that all these things has to work together at approximately the same time. So let me give you an example. The therapy that we say, that's when many people say, "Oh, it doesn't really help." Well, therapy, actually, the act of talking, the act of releasing, that if you look at energy, it's loosen up the heavy energy from grief. So people who know this in a comprehensive manner will coordinate. We say, "Go have your therapy, and then we will work with you with your energy in a timely manner within certain timing. And then from there, you go and work and do the part that release your heart." It goes boom, 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 boom. And then that's why it takes 8 to 10 weeks, some occasionally 12, instead of a year to 2 to 3. But grief, as you say, Numsa, the therapies, I would ask to, for our friend who are therapists and counselor, it does help one part of grief of it. grief is multi-dimension, if you want to call it that way, or multi-component. All of us are multi-dimension. And there are other parts that you want somebody who can understand what's going on, and even more importantly, able to coordinate them and work them together. But because otherwise you have somebody that do the energy work, and what happened is it helped, but then it's the energies kind of settle back in. You have the therapy, it helped with the mind but doesn't help with the rest. You have somebody that help with the heart, but then your energy and your mind is still so heavy, it help only partially. So find somebody who can help you in a comprehensive manner. It's kind of like baking a cake. You have all these components, and then if you want to create a beautiful cake, you need to know where to put what and when to put what. You don't want to put the icing too early, for instance, because it can make everything melt down instead of creating a beautiful flower and decoration.
I agree with you. When it comes to energy work, you need to depend with whose energy you use that person is using anyway. Because if the energy is God's energy, that whatever the energy, if it's God's energy, whatever they will always return. The penny will always return. But you have to actually know how to work with the energy. That person have to teach you how to respond when the energy returns. So you can't just say, okay, I'm an energy person and I will help you through the energy, because it doesn't last. It will always return. So that's why they say, what do we call it in our in church? In our church they call it like it's the energy that it keeps repeating, and the problems that will keep coming back and keep coming back. So you have to know how to deal with it. So it's important. But if you deal with your emotions properly, and that it does help, because it's mostly healing. Because when you're grieving, that means that grief is going into your subconscious mind. So you then have to get deliverance and you have to get healing properly. So that when you look at it, it's like I grieved for my dad and the people that I love, my loved ones that I have lost. But now when I look at their pictures, I'm no longer grieving anymore. I'm like remembering the story, the things we did together, what they are in my life. So I laugh when I look at the story. I'm like, if you were here, we'll be doing this and things like that. I'm no longer grieving anymore because I've accepted it. So, and I also
You're able to honor your death even better, because if nobody deserve or want to be remembered with pain. And sometimes people say that they're like, yeah, I really don't care about my relationship with others, and I really even don't care about my health anymore at this point. And but then how are you with the one who no longer here? Are you not able to think or talk about them? And human again is by natures want to avoid pain. So many clients says, well, I try not to think about the person, the individual, the pet, because it make me cry, because it make me sad, because it make me angry in some scenario. Because depend on the type of the loss, and I try not to get there, because if I think about it in the grocery, I'm gonna break down crying, or I'm gonna break down I'm just gonna get really upset and accidentally yell at somebody. Well, and if this is somebody that you love, whether it's a child or whether it is your parents or it's your pet, and basically you're running from this individual after they are passing, do you really think that is what they deserve? Do you really think it is honoring them? And they are not here and they cannot say, but if this is a pet, but mom or dad, or if this is your loved one, but my child, or your significant other, but my love, why are you refusing to remember me now? Why are you afraid of remembering me now instead of you thinking about me and us connecting, perhaps even though not in physical way, in the emotional way, in the love? Why aren't we keeping our love alive? And why are you afraid of me now? And that is not very honoring and not very loving. So even if for some of us who say, you know what, I'm not into relationship anymore, and I don't even care anymore, and I don't even care about my own health anymore. If you still care about the person who's no longer here, like Yunumsa says, and that's a very beautiful example. You look at it with pain, and thankfully you allow support. As you shared many times that you are able to move forward and now remember and talk about your dad and smile about it. And we hear about how amazing he is, which is another expression of honor and respect, with smile and with joy, the way he deserved to be remembered and honored and respected. And that's just is so beautiful. And yeah, church I love the way the word deliverance, to deliver us from the dark. Grief, almost everybody says grief is like darkness. Now, people label it differently. People can label it in what have you. But when we're grieving, it's feel kind of like everything is foggy. Everything, it's almost like we're looking at everything with the dark sunglasses. And to be able to recover from grief is, whether it is through church, whether it is through some other venue, to be able to deliver ourselves from the dark, where into a place where we are able to love and live again fully. Because the talking about this grief here, there are part of grief on why it affect relationship that's more common and more recognizable, as you mentioned, Numsa. It's making us not being able to fully present, or to be afraid to love, to be some people has resentment. It make us fearful and make us feel guilty, and a lot of different things. But it's I love that it's to, what is it really? Why do we want to recover from grief? It's like you say, to be able to be fully you, to be able to be fully present. I mean, imagine if you're doing a talk show and certain thing, you're like, I'm not gonna go there because it's too painful, right? That wouldn't quite work.
What you're saying, Dr. Biget, it happens a lot. Like even on Facebook, sometimes you get people that watch the talk show and then they'll send me a message and say, I gave up when it comes to relationship. I don't think there is love out there. It's just time wasters, people and stuff. So I'm like, you can't give up love just because somebody's wasting your time. You have to, even yourself, you have to take time selecting, like you have created a plan in how you're going to select that person. Your past experiences you have to use them as a skill, but you can't use them against you, because some people, they're still grieving, but they don't know that they're still grieving, and they will be like, I can't do this, I cannot put myself out there because of the bad experiences. A grief is a grief, so you just have to deal with it, and like I say, get deliverance. And when you get deliverance, and just move on. You can't forget it because it's a skill. You now, when you're using it as a skill, it helps you to get to where you need to be. I was talking to my friend yesterday. She's studying a degree. She's going through the abuse. And she was like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna use. I was like, yeah, you use your degree to actually help people who have gone through the similar situation, because how she managed to actually get out of that relationship and find love again. So I was like, just use it. And she was like, yeah, it actually does make sense.
Yeah.
Because we go through something in life for a reason, and when we go through grief, that means that there is a reason we have to go through that. Maybe we have to help others that are struggling with that grief. So it's very, very, very important.
And yeah, it's very true to not give up, because sometimes it is very easy to want to say, you know what, I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried, and I'm just done. And sometimes, and a lot of times things happens to help other things. A gentleman who worked with me, this was quite a while back actually, and he came because his wife at the age of 70 left him. And he said, I just can't believe this. And he's like, he was very angry, he was very hurt, and all these things, but his wife left him, and he says, I can't believe this. What on the, and it was not like they've been married for quite some time. They've been married over of almost 30 years. But he's like, why? What is, I understand if she died, but why? And I understand, understandably, he grieved deeply and a lot of
Why is
anger.
your mic echoing, Dr. Bigot?
Is it echoing still? I'm not sure.
Yeah, not sure why. Do you want to speak?
Is it still echoing?
Yeah, just speak and see what happens.
Okay. So this gentleman, we work together, and when we work together to help him with the separation, after us completing the work together, even before that's like halfway through, he actually says, you know what, this actually, it's very painful for his wife to left, and at the same time being able to complete that, it's actually allow him to have a much better relationship with his children. Until then, he has 3 kids, and all of them, they have what he called respectful but not close relationship, because of a one or another thing that they said he does, and he said, I didn't do that, I never had all these things. And working together, he said, well, you know what, I know I'm still really sad with about my wife, but at least it feels like I got my children. And then we will keep working together, and then he had some breathing difficulty all his life. As long as he was able to remember, he didn't breathe well, and by then he was at the point that he needed really expensive inhaler and all this treatment just to be able to breathe many times a day, many times a week. And so that's part of the part. I can't believe I'm in such situations. And at the beginning, his word was that FFFBI blah 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 left me, understandably, right? And this is something that's happened with him, and he said his whole life, and as long as he could remember. Since he was in grade school, he couldn't attend activity. He couldn't play with his kid. He couldn't attend, go hiking. He couldn't play with his grandkids. And it helped him. One day he come back. He's like, you're not gonna believe it. I said, tell me more. And he said, I just went to the doctor. I have been feeling that I've been breathing better. I just went to the doctor. We have a whole specialist check, and he said, you suddenly breathe well, and you breathe very fine, and back off from your inhaler. It was 3 times a day, drop it every week to twice and then to once and then stop and see what happened. And he's been doing that without telling me the last few weeks. And he said, so I'm completely off inhaler for the last 2 weeks. And I am off injections and all these things. I am breathing again. I feel like I finally live at the age of 70 something. This happens over a decade ago. And then so he's still breathing, he's still living without the inhaler. And at the end of that, thankfully, his wife basically was just said, I couldn't stand, but when she saw him, who he become after he released actually all the incompletely resolved grief that he has in the first 20, 30 years of his life, and the way he become, it took him about a year, over a year to just kind of make sure he didn't revert back, but they actually came back together, thankfully. But it is something that you never know, even if you are in your 70s. And he know in his word, he know he has problem, and part of it is from his childhood, part of it is in when he's young, but he has tried everything in that with that gentleman. He was in his 70s. He said he has tried, he's like, I spent so much money and I've tried everything. He tried at least like 7, 8 different therapies and hypnotherapies and energy work, and you name it, and he has it. And it's like it doesn't, none of them work. And he came to me literally because he said, well, you know what else? It doesn't. It's partly like this is the last straw, in his words, and it's partly because some other people was basically said, hey, just go give it a try. And he basically, and the other part of it, he in his later on, he's like, I basically needing somebody to talk to once a week, and I didn't want to talk to the therapist anymore, so I figured out I'll just talk to you. And then little did he know that it actually delivered him back.
But I love that, Dr. Pickett, when you mentioned that as somebody who came out of their inhaler is the process. As long as you're patient, whatever you do in life, you just become patient and just follow that strategy. In the end, you pull through whatever that is that you go through in life. If it's grief that you go through, eventually, as long as you're just patient with yourself, because everything is all about us. I see people when they're trying to do something, they are no passion. They can't wait. If it's personal development, it has to be today. I got to feel good. I got to feel like the work that somebody who's done for 20 years, they need to feel like that. But it's patient. Patient is everything. And the environment where we are as well, guys. That's why, for me, my conclusion for this will be, grief can create impact in relationships, but at the same time, if you deal with it properly, it can bring two people closer together. It's an opportunity to grow, and also you have to understand like the power of empathy and what it means to get support, and with the right people. Don't cry for everybody to support you. People make mistake by wanting everybody to understand. Just get that one champion or person or two people that can get you, that can be there for you and bring growth to your life, contribute to your growth. That's all you need. Not everybody crying for everybody. No. So please, guys, if you're watching us from YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. If you're watching us on Facebook, please, we have two groups, Unique Billionaire Mindset and Gossip Talk Shows. Please do join those groups. We don't advertise in the groups, but it's we just there, personal development, helping each other to grow each and every single day. So yeah, that is very, very
Talking
important.
about the group, sorry to jump in really quick. Talking about the group, I actually has an event on a free public event on being able to move through grief Saturday next week, June 8th. And I'll share it with you so you can put it in the group. This is open to everybody, Saturday, June 8th at 9 a.m. Los Angeles Pacific time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bickett. And guys, if you want to connect with Dr. Bickett as well, you can go to Hope Spring Eternal Introduction Agency, and Dr. Bickett has her website as well. What's the website, Dr. Bickett? What's
The
your
website, the website is Joyful Riches Beyond Grief. That's joyful and rich as in full spectrum, rich life beyond grief. Joyful Riches Beyond Grief. Another website is From Grieving to Joyful Living. Either of those work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And have a good weekend, guys. See you next week. Leave